Do you have an album, EP, single, or a music video you want to promote? Email me at ZoeDune@hotmail.com, and yes, people still use Hotmail, with "promote me" in caps in the subject line, and tell us what you want to promote. If your album, EP, or single is on Amazon, we can do it for a limited time for free, because as an Amazon associate, we earn from qualified purchases. But if your item is not on Amazon and you would like to draw attention to a different platform, we can do it starting at $25 per item for up to a week. This matters because your item will be promoted while we generate content from my music reviews, videos, podcast episodes, and interviews with prominent artists. All of these items will be promoted through our social media accounts. Keep in mind that we also have ZoeDune.com and ZoeDuneRadio.com, which is currently being played at select record stores, bars, and by regular listeners, and is constantly being promoted. Contact me at ZoeDune@hotmail.com for more details. Pricing is adjusted for the cost of time, creation, and scheduling. And now for the show. There we go. This is take 2. All right. Zoe Dune on air. Today, we'll be talking to Richard Bennett, aka Roman Angelos. Doing a take 2 here of this because initially there was some audio problems and I thought, well, let's just go ahead because there's no time. That's one of the things that has been holding me back on doing these things because I procrastinate a lot, and if something doesn't go as well as it should, then it doesn't happen at all. But we have to push through because today I watched the Arnold documentary, and the simply called Arnold, and it really put into perspective, or simply put, it motivated me a bit. This guy challenged himself repeatedly throughout his life and met those goals that he went after. And we could all do the same. So that's pretty great. I liked it. I like Arnold. I grew up on Arnold. Especially when the movie, the parts about the films was focused in on, that was pretty great, and I'm sure most everybody who watches it agrees to that. I don't think that there are many out there. There are less of political or bodybuilder crowds out there, but certainly everybody can. Films, within the films of Arnold, are more accessible. Okay. As I said, today we're going to be talking to Richard Bennett out of Brooklyn, who is on Happy Robots Records. Richard Bennett, aka Roman Angelos, who does instrumental, exotic, easy listening type of weirdness. And he's got some releases that you need to check out. If you're listening to this on ZoeDuneRadio.com, then you can look at, simply put, look for stuff while we're having our conversation, or you can start now. Familiarize yourself with those sounds. Check out Italian Soda. That's what you're hearing in the background right now. Very specifically, it sounds like real retro, 60s library music or Italian music, soundtrack score stuff. So get that and get all of his stuff. Just get it all. Just get all of it. That's what you need to do. Get it all. Support this composer. Before we get into the interview, though, let's talk about this Zoe Dune on Air program. This is a little more loose, laid back than, next to it, I was doing, and we're working on another quote-unquote season of the series, The Pulp, the Cult, and the Shadowplay Drive-In podcast, where me and two others talk about film or movies. So we've got that in the works, and that's pretty loosey-goosey. But the other podcast that I've had longest on here is Incendiary American. And lately, while I'm getting a lot of music and I'm listening to a lot of it, we haven't had a program, I don't think, if I can remember off the top right now, since last week. And I don't know if there's going to be one this week. And here's why. Well, I'm doing this broadcast here. But I have thought every now and again that maybe a consolidation of both this thing and Incendiary American would be a good thing to do. So I don't know. It depends on how much can get done to make sure that happens twice a week. For now, Zoe Dune on Air will be a separate thing. So, I don't know. I'm just putting that out there. I will say to add that I do stand up on some open mics, trying out stuff. And I recently actually signed up for a Deep Ellum Comedy Festival here, but have not heard anything back. I don't know if there are maybe I just got in too late, or maybe something more nefarious, but I'm willing to bet it's just that I got in a little too late on it, so I'll take another shot at the next festival. But building up to then, I'm going to try to hit more open mics to work on new stuff. So I'd like to add some of that footage or those jokes here to this show, which should make it the show more, versatile, variety kind of a thing. So we're going to have fun with it, I feel. So as we go through these episodes, I imagine we'll find a place, a format to fall into for it. So we'll see. I also talk about some stuff that's going on in my life, or some big ideas or whatever here. So we'll find the format, but that's what I'm playing around with right now. If you're listening to this, we are doing video of it, but because it takes me more time to do video than the audio portion, the audio is priority and will always go up. So we'll do the broadcast at night, Sunday nights and Wednesday nights at 9. Sunday nights and Wednesday nights at 9. And then they turn into podcasts the next day. So by 12 a.m., they'll be up. And those will be shared out, and hopefully you'll share them out as well. Get people to tune in. I think what we're going to do is the broadcast version will be a little bit more of a loose format. There'll be mistakes made, I'm sure, but the podcast will be a little cleaner, more prepared kind of a situation, or not prepared, but edited is what I mean. So you'll miss stuff on the podcast that you'll hear on the broadcast. So there's that. All right. So let's get to the interview here. Let's talk with Richard Bennett of Roman Angelos. Okay. Richard Bennett, a.k.a. Roman Angelos, or Angelos, or however you want to say it, right?
That's closer, the second one. I've just taken to however people say it. I'm happy with it.
Mm-hmm.
But, when I introduce myself at a show, I'll do it the way I want to.
Sure. Keep it rotating. It was interesting because I just saw a thing about Steve Buscemi. Apparently, they had a nice little discussion on the Colbert Report about how that's said. And Colbert's like, we always said it Buscemi from the get-go. And he says, well, when I go to the old country, they say Buscemi. But it's Buscemi. And he says, if I want to get a better table, it's Buscemi. If it's Buscemi, it's like,
He lives in my neighborhood. I see him all the time.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. You know what? I was pleasantly surprised that you said that, but also not shocked because you're you're in Brooklyn.
I am in Brooklyn. Yeah, home to many cool people.
Yeah, you see Ad Rock riding around there in his bike or anything?
No, I think he may live in Williamsburg. I'm gonna guess. That's like the cooler area. I don't live in like an uncool area, but I don't live in a cool area. Let's say
right.
It that way.
Okay. All right. So I just listened again to the new remix release for. You there?
Okay, there.
Oh my God.
Now I gotcha.
Oh my God.
Zoom.
Hold on. I know. Well, it's either Zoom or something. There's always something. There's a trifecta at least of different things with technology, right? And we have to fight with all the time.
You don't need to tell me. I'm a audio engineer.
Yeah,
by day,
right.
So it's just like that's all it is seemingly.
Yeah. Okay, so we're back. Let's see. It's record. Okay, it's recording now. All right. I had to do a hard boot. By the way, so when you're using, I was actually talking with somebody about this the other day, and years ago, I mean, what are we talking about? 2006 is when the iPhone changed everything, and so you got Apple in the center of it all, and I was just going crazy with the Apple gift cards and, downloading from iTunes all the time, just blindly just doing it. Right. But somebody the other day was talking about using, their apps for creating music, or not their apps, their software for creating music. And at the time when I was getting into Apple stuff, I was also getting into playing around with operating systems. So Linux was like the thing I was really into. I was trying to be like, I'm not going to fall into this Apple trap, right?
Right, right.
So you got like Ubuntu Studio. Do you know anybody who uses their DAW like
No.
maybe do like and this is in your wheelhouse, circuit bending or anything like that with a speak and spell, anything
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that?
sure. Yep. I know that. Yeah. Stuff like that, of course. Yeah.
But as far as like what you use, you're using are you using open source at all or anything like that? Just
No,
curious.
no, no. I use Pro Tools because it's just, I hate this word, but industry standard, and kind of like when people work, or like you're working with someone, it's like either Pro Tools or Logic. So I just stick in it, and I hate it because they get you on everything. They're like, oh, $500 to. I can't remember what I got charged for, but it was like obviously just because I was using an old piece of hardware, they just wanted to charge me more money.
Oh, I see. So they have obviously they have it planned out where they're able to do that. They're like, yeah, we're going to get you here and there.
Yeah, or like when they come out with new stuff, they're like, hey, what if people want to still use the such and such converter? They're like, well, let's charge them a downgrade fee, or like
Oh, okay.
you have to install something that talks to the old thing for like $500.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about that.
It's kind of like the opposition, the reverse of price gouging. It's more like, let's put the eyeballs back, and which is even worse, right? It looks good.
Yeah.
But you also use because listening to your first album,
Yes.
why isn't there like a bundle of games already using those? I mean, why haven't you put that out? There should be like some 8-bit.
That's what I want to know.
And because I was listening the Highway Chase track, I'm like, yeah, I could totally see this happening on me on the console, not a console, but with the joysticks there, just trying to get in that chase.
I can't remember which game that was inspired by. It was inspired by some game, and I can't remember the game, and I can't even remember what the soundtrack was. But some of those were video games that I was kind of half remembering, half inventing, half just messing around with. Actually, I did a lot of that. I did a lot of that work in Reason, and then a little bit in Ableton, and then I worked with a few things like tape bouncing and tape manipulation and some other weird degradation plugins to kind of just try and give it a smear it around in the dirt a little bit.
Yeah,
so that was fun.
Yeah, and just the idea, just the concept of a 10-minute album, each track 1 minute, it's clever, and but that's the other thing. I guess it comes down to talking about the open source or circuit bending kind of thing. You can create a MIDI file and then use the MIDI file. The MIDI file is like the kernel of the track, so you can attach various sounds to it, or various percussive elements or instruments and stuff like that to it, right? So you have the little source there, and you can build up around that, right? So because you're a multi-instrumentalist, and you're doing you're credited with doing guitar, and you're doing percussion on a lot of these things too. So you're doing actual instruments, but you're also doing it digitally, or kind of like that whole beatbox kind of sound. we all know that going over to Guitar Center and hitting that button on that, a synth when we were kids, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
oh, this would be great to use, right? So,
yeah.
but you're also involving a whole bunch of other actual instruments too when you feel it necessary.
Yeah, I mean, I come from a background of being let's call it an acoustic musician. Not like that I played acoustic music, but I played like analog instruments.
Yeah.
And then I got into electronic stuff more like in my mid 20s, when I finally realized like how cool they could be, and how, I grew up listening to or hearing, just only being exposed to kind of like somewhat lame electronic music as was on the radio in the 90s, and then when people started introducing me to stuff like Kraftwerk
Hmm.
and some of the krautrock stuff, where they were using it kind of more as an augmentation
Hmm.
of the sound, and like getting like just really weird messed up sounds for it, from it. And I was like, okay, that's cool, that's more in my what I'd like to do. I want to treat it as an instrument. I want to, even though it could be manipulated and could do many things.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of how I came to it. So I probably start from an acoustic, again, like acoustic instrument framework, and then move out from there.
Hmm. Um, and a lot of the stuff that you tap into, I'm sure you would probably remember this. I really got into so Capitol Records put out the Ultra Lounge series.
Oh yeah.
You remember that? I got
Oh
all
yeah.
of those things every time that were like I'd see one. Like the first one they had was a sampler one that was like the leopard skin,
Yeah, yeah.
thing.
Great
Um,
design.
Great design, just great collection of stuff that I would have never heard. I wouldn't know anything about Les Baxter or anything if it wasn't for that. I mean, I probably would have
Yeah.
found it. I did actually find, I think, like a Martin Denny and a Les Baxter album in my grandfather's collection because that was just
Right.
like the thing.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Well, I think that's like I was first exposed to that music via those samplers, and I think what it did was just like it kind of legitimized it a bit as a, as a younger kid, because I saw whipped cream and other delights in my dad's record collection since I
Hmm.
was, 3 or whatever, and I never thought twice. I mean, except that it's got a very alluring cover. Um, but I never like thought the music on it might be cool. And then when I was like, oh, this stuff might be cool, and then I went back and listened to it, I was like, oh, actually, I kind of dig it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Capitol Records was probably just like playing a game, being like, what else can we repackage to sell to these kids?
Sure.
So I feel like a victim of,
I mean, look at that title, Whipped
yeah,
Cream and Other Pleasures. I mean,
yeah.
yikes. I mean, we wouldn't
That's
know what that meant. As a kids, we wouldn't really know what that meant, but other than like our version of like, wow, whipped cream, I would love some whipped cream
yeah,
on
yeah, of
whatever,
course.
and toys,
Yeah.
but and it's different meaning now.
Yes.
But
Exactly.
yeah, so music for underwater supermarkets. It's just the title alone, but then listening to the album, there's this obviously it conjures up the 50s perspective or vision of what the future was going to be like.
Yes, very
You
much
know,
so.
how we're going to colonize Mars or Jupiter, or
Yep.
just like wherever we're going to be, and big robots or whatever. And then who's the thing also about colonizing under the oceans, or
Oh, I loved that stuff. Yeah.
stuff like that. It's like, wow, your imagination just like goes there. And it's supermarkets is such a thing with like it's a different, it's kind of in the same league as the nostalgic mall shopping experience.
Yeah.
But supermarkets are totally a you don't see it that much now. If you do, it's probably like a CVS or a Walgreens.
Yeah, they don't, they don't play what you might have heard back then.
Yeah.
And there's like some kind of middle point between supermarket music and the kind of music of that and sort of that throwback 50s vibe. I mean, a lot of the
Yeah.
same composers did I went and kind of dug deep into Muzak
Hmm.
many years ago, and a lot of the same composers that did what were called like library records, and really super talented people did a lot of Muzak arrangements. And so there is a commonality like of actually the same composers doing that, and the library stuff being background music for, whatever 60s ad might have been on, um advertising,
Yeah.
great cereal or trips to Hawaii, whatever, what have you. So yeah, there is a kind of point in between both of them. And I've always been kind of like a bit obsessed, as you were talking about, like the 50s
Hmm.
vision of the future. Um, a show like the Jetsons.
Yeah.
I love things like that. Just I love kind of it's such an innocent take on it. It's like innocent and optimistic, and it's like a sweet way of looking at things.
Yeah.
And I just like the aesthetic.
Yeah. The aesthetic is cool. And it's like, and also, uh, with like there's some stuff that you have on there, especially towards the end, which is very like you hear like Bertrand Burgerlot, if I'm saying it right, Bougerlet. I don't know,
Hmm.
like the French thing.
Yeah.
Uh, Esquivel. Wow,
Yep.
that like
Yeah.
that guy. I was like looking at some of his discography and thinking, okay, there's some stuff that's on the surface accessible that I've seen here and there, but that dude had so many releases that were, under the radar, it seems. But then, of course, that was back in that day. Uh, boy, I would love to have all of that.
Yeah.
And your stuff fits in perfectly. If somebody has like a collection of that stuff, your stuff fits in perfectly with that.
Well, yeah. Well, thank you. I think there was also a little more of an openness for experimentation in what would have been considered popular music.
Right.
So you listen to some of the just to pull out one thing, you listen to some of the early stereo recordings when they finally got stereo happening. And like some of the stuff they did is by standards of today just out there, man. Like you would
Yeah.
never hear some of the panning and some of the placement and some of the it's just like far out. And some of the records that they would make to kind of show how cool stereo is, and they tried to market it to mass audiences. And I think that back then they were probably just still finding their feet in the music
Hmm.
business, and so they were throwing things at the wall, and it's kind of cool to unearth them.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of experimentation in music. I'm not trying to be an old man here, but you're not going to see it next to one of your favorite pop records,
Yeah.
you know.
Uh, and that's interesting also because just recently, and I think we're on the same track here with this. Can you believe that Aphex Twin uh Drux is like over 20 years old now?
Yeah.
Because I
Well,
was
that one I can for some reason. It feels like that one feels like a while ago for some reason.
for maybe the drum and bass quality of it. Maybe that's probably it.
Right. Hmm.
But I saw somebody reacting to it, and one of these new someone from new generation, millennials, whatever,
Yeah.
a young person reacting to it and being like, they couldn't I guess you'd have to know drum and bass, the drum and bass market, or know that that happened to, or be live through it to know that that was a thing,
Right.
right? But there's also one of the things she said was, I would be very interested to hear what a jazz person with a jazz ear would think about this. And I'm like, okay, well, I know somebody I can reach out to who's he's generally a bass player. Wait till I send him some,
Yeah.
square pusher. But he's a bass player, jazz teacher, and musician, and he does like sessions through at a local club
Mhm.
throughout the week. And I was like, I wonder what he's got to say about this. So I'm still waiting for a response on it. Um,
Well, I tell you, I
yeah.
was in school for jazz at the point that drum and bass was like the thing.
Hmm.
And it was fun because people were like super into it, actually, because there was this sort of complex and jazzish
Hmm.
elements to it and extremely percussive, and like everybody in like any of the bands or the ensembles, everybody had a drum and bass song. They brought in their drum and bass thing. And I think even one of the jazz schools here in New York had a drum and bass ensemble, which I kind of laugh at now because I was like, oh man, they were really trying to be
Yeah.
cool at the moment. But that, how long did that last? Like,
Right.
if it lasted into 2006, maybe you kind of.
And I think it started in 2006.
Oh, I guess that's maybe when it kind of, because I remember it being more like '02, '03 when I first started like hearing it. So anyway, but
Well, but also like let's look at the source of it, or who did it best, right? Ronnie Size, Brown Paper Bag.
mhm,
Like that thing there, basically, as soon as it started, it fizzled because if Ronnie Size ain't doing it, it ain't being done.
right, right.
So, I mean, and then like that thing, and even after like when Represents came out, like I think he had the Modes album that came out,
Yeah, yeah.
and I was like, okay, it's not the same thing, you know, but it's still Ronnie Size to a certain point. And I followed his other releases after that, like he was doing some single releases and stuff like that.
Uh-huh.
Um, but going back to that Aphex Twin thing, like there is that, but there's also something, and I asked this jazz musician, I challenge you, because at some point the response from somebody who was in the thread said, um, there's some of these things that are melodically beautiful and you know different, but there's also things that are jarring, and I just like skip to the next thing.
Right. But isn't that why it's good?
Isn't that why it's good? And I said to him, I said, here's the thing. When your ear is listening to it, there's something about it, and it's probably because I have a different ear than what they have,
Yeah.
is that I'm hearing chaos, something that would make me, but I'm also looking for the melody. I'm also hearing a melody. There's something that keeps me like attached to it, however
Yeah.
dispersive it is over time. Maybe
Yeah,
because
I
it's
mean,
Richard James. I don't know.
yeah. I mean, you can't always have prettiness throughout, and you got to throw some of that dust on top of it. Um,
Yeah.
I think.
I'm not
And
trying to make
then
this about FX Twin. We're talking about Roman Angelos here, right?
well, we get off a little bit there.
Yeah. But when when you're approaching your work, the way that you approach your work, like the template, I'm very
Yeah.
fascinated with your template on this because, well, let's just say it really simply. What is your template? How do you start it?
Sure.
How do you what gets you juiced up? How do you
Yeah.
wrangle that energy?
I'd say that it shifts, but for long periods of time, it stays the same.
Hmm.
So I think at that point that I wrote Music for Underwater Supermarkets, I was really into my Juno 106. And in fact, that the title song, The Underwater Supermarket, came from me just like messing around and then finding some really cool patch that went along with some really nice voicings. And then it was kind of like off to the races
Mm.
with that. And then, I also go by what I'm kind of like also obsessed with the otherwise at the moment. So I was really into like rhythm pops, drum machine loops. So I kind of try to add that in. So yeah, the thing that gets me juiced is, well, it shifts, but let me take another step back.
Mm.
I always write my harmonies first. That's like the thing that gets me going. And I rarely write a melody. It's usually like some collection of chords that once they fit together right, all of a sudden the melody then does pop into my head.
Oh.
Yeah, so I just sit at the piano or the guitar or the synthesizer messing around with chords until it kind of like snaps into place. And that's kind of like zoom out completely template of how I work.
Now, when you're doing that, though, when you're starting off with a harmony,
Yeah.
or I mean, how do you? Is there any way you can describe how that works? Because so when I was in composition, music composition, the
Mhm.
only thing that I heard was constantly like, I guess I was just an angry kid. It was just like whatever the teacher says is wrong. He's like, you start with the melody. I'm like, why not start with the harmony? He's like, what are you talking about?
Right, right.
You know?
Well,
How does that work?
I I think about this often, and I feel like I was really lucky. So I mentioned that I went to school for music, and I went to school for music performance.
Hmm.
And in the middle of school, I said to my advisor, I want to switch to composition. And he basically like just I'm trying to not curse, but he
Oh, you
basically
can if you want.
okay, so he basically just shit on me and made me feel terrible and was like, I don't think you really like composition. And so, I was really upset, but then um I stuck with performance.
Yeah.
The thing I feel like I got lucky with is that I ended up having a lot of hangups about performing and about playing. But since I never really had any formal direction for about composition, I feel like I was able to have freedom. I knew all my harmony from my playing and stuff like that. But, I watched some of the kids who came out of school with composition degrees and they like, they had all their hangups. They couldn't write music that wasn't for like, friggin' bone saw and prepared piano,
Hmm.
like very obtuse new music. So, yeah, so I feel like I was really lucky that I didn't get direction or too much direction. So I never and I also, you know, yeah, I went to I don't know what kind of composition experience you had, but going to a jazz program, they're a little
Yeah.
more loose with it. They're like, "Oh, you want to add a thing here? Yeah, sure. Why not?" Instead of thou must, always go to a dominant chord before
Right.
the one or something like that.
Well, those jazz guys are cool cats, you know? You know what I mean?
I guess so.
Yeah, and so when I earlier before high school, I was in the orchestra, violin, and then just kind of moved from there to bass.
Mm.
And then when I went to an arts magnet here in Dallas for high school. Um and I jumped over to visual.
Oh,
And then I did a split cluster with theater. So it was kind of like, presentation in that sense as well.
yeah.
Totally, got out of the orchestra thing,
Yeah, man.
which I could have done there, but I still wanted it. So I took a music composition course for that.
Yeah.
Um, but uh, also the thing, and then with the starting bands and doing that, it's still in your system. It's still you're still trying it out. You're still the things that you can't that they won't allow you to experiment because a lot of these things, especially with visual arts, like why are you doing that? It looks like why are you doing cartoon work? And then you see
Right.
like cartoon artists who are just like, what are you talking about?
Right. Yeah.
What's the,
Yeah.
restriction? Like, why? So you
Yeah.
can kind of he always has the opportunity to use those things or teach yourself or learn what you want to learn. Unfortunately, not when probably feel you need it right then and there. You want somebody to be like, hey, you ask them, how do I do this? Well, here's how you do it. And they'll like deny you, not trying to turn a negative thing or anything,
Yeah.
just saying that, you always have that opportunity. And a lot of these times it's outside of the box, like learning on your own is the best way.
Yeah. I am a teach quite a bit and teach quite a bit of guitar. Uh and yeah, it's a real balance to try and give somebody direction that they feel comfortable, but also let them know that, hey, you know, if you want to add a such and such here, like, sure, you could do it. No, there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do it.
Yeah.
Just like if you like the sound of it, cool. I think it might not be that great, but listen to like Daniel Johnston and the Shags and stuff like that. Imagine if people told them that well, actually, people did tell the Shags that they sucked, but, um,
And
but like,
you were playing guitar with them, right?
yeah, yeah, I play guitar with the Shags. That was a really fun experience and
Yeah.
continually baffling. I wish I could say that I understood more about their music from playing with them, but I feel like I know just about as much, possibly am even more confused.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
Um,
Okay.
yeah. It's I'll tell you a little interesting story about the Shags is that they have all their music written out. They have sheet music for it. It is not written as it sounds. It's not written with like odd time signatures and stuff. It's all in four. It's mostly quarter notes. It's mostly in the key of C or G.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there was, my take on it, having been pretty close to it, is that they were learning all this stuff and there was just like a disconnect between writing it on the piano and then executing it. Like their hands and their ears just wouldn't allow them to execute it how they wanted to. I say this hearing a bunch of kids, younger kids bands as well. Like I know what
Mm-hmm.
that sound is. And but they also, I think the thing that keeps people coming back is they did it in a way that actually does make sense. And if you listen to the recordings enough,
Mm-hmm.
and I've played with a number of drummers in that Shags reunion setup, and it is so hard to actually play it correctly. Most people come to it and they think that it's just like, I'm just going to mess around and play badly. It's not that. There's something I can't put my finger on it. There's only one drummer I know out there who could do it. Her name is Laura Cromwell. Shout out to her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah. So anyway, a little bit of a tangent there, but
Well, so uh you're talking the transition is uh is problematic there. Is that what you mean from the
from the
what's on
written
the
page,
paper?
yes, yes, yes. I think that they just like they were able to write it, they were able to conceive it. They took lessons in theory, but when they're trying to play the guitar, you could hear them kind of struggling with how to play it. And you could hear the drummer, she knows, this is on the original recordings. The drummer, she knows her beats, she knows her fills, but she is not keeping time with her sisters.
Mm-hmm.
She's like off kind of in another world, but half listening to them. It's
That's
uh
interesting.
yeah.
You know, I never think about that transition. I always think, well, it's probably because I guess it depends on the writing, the approach to the writing part of it. I
Yeah.
don't see myself writing anything until after it's played.
Yeah, right. Interesting. Yeah.
I
That makes
mean,
sense.
that's the way I always thought that's the way it's supposed to be, right? So one of the things that uh there were three of us that put together a band, and we go to the practice space, and we wanted to obviously from the beginning, okay, this is how we're going to do it. We weren't necessarily those people who were like, okay, it's going to start this way and then we're going to end here.
Right, right.
It was more like, okay, well, we would do that, but we're not those people, is what the talk we'd have. So it'd be like, so let's just play, let's just jam and see what happens. So plenty of bloody, fingers later, and we fall into a groove. And I'm like, okay, we can record all of these sessions, listen to them, and see what we can salvage and put those together. That's a good start. That's something, right?
Yeah, that's a lovely way to work.
And then, write it out afterwards. Of course, we got into fighting each other and throwing things at each other, and then it just didn't happen.
Right.
But as far as like the experiment worked out, where I felt that was just a natural way to do that. Um, so I haven't done it for like a long time like that. I'm just my musical interests now are generally in like, oh, what are you doing? What are they doing? This and that. So I'm not involved anymore.
Right.
I would love to get involved again.
Yeah.
But and especially with what you do, um, you're really tapped into the instrumentation, the instrumental, like the soundtrack, the scoring the memories or the experience, or
Thank you. Yes,
maybe you're
it's very kind of you.
we're talking nostalgia, and people are really into that, but we're always into nostalgia, right? We're always thinking about these things that you know our brains go to crazy places, and we want to put a soundtrack to it, right?
Yeah.
And you're doing that um with with the supermarkets underwater remix.
Yes.
So I recently went over. I did this. I saw this show here. A band out of Reading, Pennsylvania. They're called the Russian White. They're kind of witch house, dark wave kind of thing going on.
Oh, nice.
So they put an album out some years ago, and recently the album has been put to other people to remix the tracks. So you get the album back, and every track is remixed by a different artist.
Yeah.
And the experience is, if you're again, your approach to, or the end result of what you put out is a concept from beginning to end. And they have the same approach. I mean, we live
Right.
in a world where singles are, they focus on the singles, but what's the theme from, track 1 to track 20 or whatever?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and and of course, what's the experience? The experience of listening to your original album and then the remix version are two different things altogether. Would you now? Well, you don't have different artists remixing every single track. You've got,
No.
you got one producer. That's his. And also, I love the way that he plays around with the titles, like not the, you know,
Yeah, his remix names of them. I love them.
yeah, and I never knew how to pronounce his name, but I always say Theory de Mur.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We remember his stuff.
Yeah.
But
That one is probably my favorite track personally.
I thought he was mad at you. I thought he was like, I'm gonna throw a whole like Lost Highway, Angelo Badalamenti slowdown on this guy.
Oh no, that was one where I was like, please, like I think we had been through some tracks and I was like, could you please give me something that's like a like just an 18-minute, just sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's moody. I mean, that's a different
Yeah.
supermarket shopping experience altogether.
Yeah. I mean, so, Scott has done, Scott Salter and I have been friends for quite a while now. And he's done full remix records for artists in the past as well. Most famously, I think he did like some of John Vanderslice's records, and he did like a full remix album of it. And I'm just like a big fan of his
Hmm.
solo work and his approach. And I knew that when I was like, okay, I want to do a remix record, but I want it to be like super different. And Scott and I actually have a lot of musical reference points in common. However, he definitely veers more towards the, death rock, goth, early 80s,
Hmm.
Cocteau Twins, Dolly's Car, stuff like that. And so it's like, all right, man, I want you to just take this and just mess it up. And you're saying like, what's the concept, of when you're listening to something. And the concept of this one was, the original one is a bouncy, I'm in an underwater supermarket. And then the next one is more, oh shit, like this supermarket is underwater. What happened to it? Is it
Hmm.
like it's underwater because it's 200 years from now, and it's been submerged because of sea level rise, or there was a terrible storm that hit, so it's a bleaker view of that. And I just thought it was
It's
like,
kind of like those abandoned places videos, like Proper People or something.
oh,
You know what I
yes,
mean?
yeah, yeah, those are great. Yes, yeah. And so that was what I was looking for, and I think he totally delivered. And he threw a bunch of other interesting things in there that I had not expected. But I've recently got into just sort of like handing over my stuff a lot more, because I am a very specific producer and arranger,
Hmm.
and I've started to, I think, personally just learn how much can happen from just handing control to the people that you trust, not to some freaking moron off the street, but you're like, hey, why am I hiring this person? Let them do their thing.
That would be interesting too, though. Hey, moron, here, mix this thing.
Actually, maybe I will. I'll call it like, I'll keep it anonymous. I'll call, I'll say like moron off the street mix.
Yeah, moron mixes, something like that.
Yeah.
So, what do you have in mind coming up? What do you got planned for some? Because when you talk about, or when the idea of library music, wow, what a specific thing, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Hmm.
it is a genre. I mean, I remember getting like Vampiros Lesbos. You
Yeah. Yeah.
got German composers doing Italian movie scores. Uh, it's certainly
Italian
a
composers
genre.
doing bossa novas. It's
Yeah, yeah.
love it.
I think I might be wrong on the pronunciation here. I always am. But
So am I.
a long time ago, Bebe Gilberto,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Hmm.
she put out an album that I still listen to this day. Um, I'm trying to think of
Oh, is
this
it that
guy.
electron? It's the one with the white cover and like
Yeah,
her, like a drawn face of her or something. I think I know which
right.
one you're talking about. Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's a really good one.
there's a remix of that too, which has
Yep.
got
Hmm.
who's the producer that died in a fire trying to rescue, because he produced that album, I think.
Oh, I don't know.
Suba.
Oh, okay.
So Suba, the studio goes on catches on fire, and he runs in to save a lot of his stuff from getting burned, and he perished in it, unfortunately.
Wow.
But he had an album that came out, and the way they were pitching it at the time was that it's a kind of like a Blade Runner bossa nova kind of
Mm.
thing.
Oh,
And it's a highly praised album, and unfortunately the only one he put out that was just like him.
I actually don't. What you said is like, I don't know if I want to hear it because I might have to give it up. I
Oh,
might have to give up my career in writing. I was like, that sounds like exactly what I'm trying to do. Shit.
we'll edit this out in post. Uh, I would recommend listening to it. In fact, I've been really getting into vinyl lately, and I think I saw a vinyl release. So
Oh,
I'm thinking maybe I should get that while it's under the radar. Before this goes up, I'll probably get it while it's probably like, $30 or something.
yeah.
Who knows where it'll go? That'll be like, what? Do we need to get that shit? Um, but I remember that specifically and how it changed. Like I was really into a lot of like I said, ultra lounge stuff, but I was also into OM lounge stuff, like down tempo,
Yeah.
and he kind of fell into that area. But yeah, bossa nova, dude, and like, uh Martin Denny, Jackie Gleason. Like I know that
Yeah,
Capitol
those
Records
records.
put that thing out, and that's like the collection of Jackie Gleason's music, but I kept
Yep.
saying, and I hate to say this, I kept saying there's no way that he composed this stuff. And then I
Probably
find
not.
out that he
Oh,
had somebody else compose it for him.
yeah. I don't think he was
Yeah.
well, I mean, even some of our most famous heroes did not compose a lot of what they're well known for, or they like wrote like half the theme and they, handed it to their orchestrator.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'm doing a tour in a few days in the UK, opening for Rodney Cromwell.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, speaking of the sort of like as you're going and talking about more of this Brazilian thing, the I just spent 7 days in the studio working on a new record.
Oh.
Yeah, that hopefully I think it'll be out in the fall or in the spring. I'm not really sure what. And I was working with the producer. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, Sean Lee.
Mm.
He's just got a ton of work out and of very varying types. Um, but he came to my attention because speaking of library music, he put out this record called Synthesizers in Space. And it's just got like a great cover and like like he just like nailed the vibe. And he nails it like without being kind of like smug.
Yeah.
It's like a true homage and understanding of that music. But yeah, it's far more. There's like some pretty serious Brazilian stuff in it. Like I got a Brazilian percussionist, and as we were recording, the one of the people at the session said described it to someone else as Morricone meets Jobim, and I
Oh.
was like, all right, I'm going with it. I'm taking that.
Yeah.
With some synthesizers. Throw it in there for good measure. So,
Awesome. One thing I forgot to mention when you're talking about like analog and a lot of the early influencers,
yeah.
I just thought about this the other day and I read up on it a bit and I was like, wow, I was really shocked. So the soundtrack to Forbidden Planet,
Oh, classic.
that's wild. If we are talking about experimenting outside of the box and
Oh,
doing
man.
like just some wild shit,
Yeah.
like what went into that, I mean, Wendy Carlos could only wish that she was there.
Yeah.
Sorry, Wendy.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll talk and, get this figured out. But I'm just going to say it. What they were doing for that is just like phenomenal. Like, what are we
Yeah.
talking? Like valves and pushing air through things? I don't know what was going on with that. They were just like,
Yeah.
you know, uh,
Yeah. I mean, it's always interesting probably to be there at the birth of whatever the new instrument or kind of zeitgeist is, because you sort of have that access to it, and you don't have an attachment to it yet.
yeah,
Oh, it should sound like such and such. Oh, it should be this. You're just like, what do I do with this? And you get some pretty cool, interesting results.
yeah. Uh, One thing I was going to send you earlier before we got on here is a recommendation you should check out because I was like, oh, he would probably dig this.
I'm all about it.
It's a guy named Prozac Morris. Do you know him?
Okay. No, I have not heard him.
If you check him out on Bandcamp,
Okay.
he's got some remix stuff, but he basically does like space age approach to, you know, remixes or his music. So if you're totally into this kind of stuff,
That's super cool. Well, hey, maybe I don't know. Where is he from? Maybe I gotta give him a call.
I think he's California. Yeah, he's LA.
All right.
So he did a there's a an artist that I was promoting some years ago called Eli Raybon, and
Mm-hmm.
he put an album out called Super Toys, and he handed the guy, I think he did one of his tracks, remixed one of his tracks. But then from there, after he told me, like, yeah, check this dude out, I started listening to his stuff, and he's got that whole approach there too, with it. I just love it. I mean, it's just like
I
it's so bright
I like the name.
and yeah, it's and the complete op. Well, I guess like throw some Prozac in, and things are good, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, check him out to see what you think, because I think you guys are in the same wheelhouse. It'd be,
All right, cool. I'm
you
always
know,
interested. I don't really check out enough new stuff. I've been trying to make a more of a habit of it, but I love
right.
getting recommendations.
Well, if you think Suba is going to throw you off your game,
Nah. I think it's gonna, I might, hopefully I don't write another record after hearing it. I
no,
gotta focus on what I'm doing.
focus on yours, man.
Exactly.
Richard, it's great
Yeah.
to talk with you.
Nice to talk with you too.
Yeah. So when you get the thing going, hit me up, and I'll put it out on through my network and stuff. Um, Let me ask
Okay.
you something real quick, because I'm
Sure.
curious about this.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked to a lot of artists that I've talked to. So I have my website, which is also a social network. I'm not promoting that angle just yet,
Mm-hmm.
but I also have a internet radio station, because I used to book bands, and after I stopped, publicity firms and labels and stuff kept sending me stuff, and I'm like, okay, I'll do a podcast to talk about these things. Every episode goes by, I'm like, I forget about the music. It's like, well, why don't I just start an internet radio station to rotate these tracks on here?
Right.
And accumulating indie artists and their music, I'm like, well, this is the complete thing that I want over having to listen to the Beatles over and over again. Every time I walk by a radio, it's like, Duran Duran again, whatever.
Right.
So anyway, there's a new thing that I'm starting, and I'm curious about what you might think of this, depending on all the players that are involved with your project and
Mm-hmm.
the breakdown of how this works. So if you're promoting Spotify, you're only getting a fraction of a penny after 1,000 listens or something or whatever.
Yeah. Yep.
So I kind of want to do a boutique thing where every time somebody requests an artist's track on my radio station online, then I pay them out for every play. And I'm wondering if it's just you versus a band that's got 5 people in it.
Right.
How do you break down Spotify when you put your stuff on there? How does
Oh,
the
well,
payout break down for you?
I mean, I just go through I don't know how you would like what mechanism you would be going through, but like I just go through ASCAP. And so,
Mm-hmm.
ASCAP is collecting because I'm the composer on nearly all of my stuff, sole composer. So, I'm just
They handle all that for you then.
yeah, they handle all that for me. Like you say, it's nothing. If you're trying to work and be at a boutique and work directly, you'd have to get submissions, like I would guess from the artist, like this is who wrote the song, unless you
Yeah.
wanted to just pay the band completely.
Yeah.
So
Kind of like a licensing fee.
yeah. So you'd probably, I think the mechanism might be a little bit difficult. Um, but I love the idea. I mean, I think it's very
Okay.
it's a very cool idea. I mean,
Because for
yeah,
one thing, like one of the things I started doing with, and this is only with artists that are not signed to ASCAP or anything, and
right.
they're just like leaning on Spotify for it. And I'm like, look, I'll send you the reports. Uh, for right now, we'll focus on Bandcamp Friday. So if you're on Bandcamp, we'll promote it have your people come over and do the requesting. And then at the same time, I'll be like, all these artists that you're requesting from, you can go to their Bandcamp page and get their album, and they'll get
Right.
100% of it. So that's kind of part of the bundling it up with that.
Yeah. That seems like an easier way of doing of promoting that. But I
Yeah.
mean, if you could figure out a way, that's a very cool and good thing you're doing for the community as a whole.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, that's the challenge. And, I see a lot of people just going like, go to my Spotify, go to my Spotify. I'm like, no, don't go there. I want to walk down the street with a big,
Boombox.
sign, I mean, a boom box, and be like, the end of Spotify is nigh, blah, blah, blah. I mean,
Well, that's a whole, I mean, yeah, I could go into a
yeah.
whole thing on that, but we'll leave that to another day.
All right, man. Well, again, hit me up. I've actually went through, Shauna gave me the heads up on you.
Awesome. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I'll probably be doing some stuff. It's gonna be a little while, but after the tour.
yeah.
So
Okay.
I'm gonna take the summer regain.
Final thing, any plans on the States?
I would like to. I the yes, in short, yes, but no actual hard dates yet.
Or South by Southwest? Because I mean that's like close to me, so
Yeah, I think it takes something significant to get me there.
okay.
Not even money, but like I've
Yeah.
been there enough times doing like the 2 a.m. set.
Right.
I think I'd at least need to kind of like be in a good crew. But I will keep you posted.
All right, man.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks to you, and have a.
I'll tag you as soon as this goes
Yeah,
up.
please do. I'll promote it.
All right, brother. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye. All right. A good discussion there. Good conversation with the man. The time that we actually did that, he was going to go tour with Rodney Cromwell. It might happen again. I think they've been doing performances back and forth since they're both on the same label of Happy Robots Records. But as of now, that tour was a mini tour in the UK. Unless you're there, you're obviously not going to be able to see it. But it has since passed. So In any case, check out Rodney Cromwell's stuff too, and everybody that we talked about on this episode, on this show. Prozac Morris, hopefully he reached out to him. Check him out. We also mentioned a lot of older stuff that here before any of us was on it. We're here. So go listen to that. All right. Next episode, we're going to be talking to Andrew Sachs of Field Plan, FLDPLN. And this actually was an episode or a talk that we had some time back. I'm talking probably about over a year ago for Andrew. The thing is that since we're starting this show from the beginning with this format, we're going to rerun those conversations because this is a better platform than what I had before. And we want to consolidate all of that here. You want to hear this guy. You want to hear the discussion that we had. I think all of you guys that are into retro stuff and, you know, maybe growing up as a kid in the 80s or especially in the 80s, you're going to want to listen to this discussion. And before we even get there, be sure to check out Field Plan on Bandcamp or Amazon. I also need to mention that since I mentioned that we're going to be doing video of this show, there's other videos coming up that will be put out on YouTube, my YouTube channels. But here's the thing. I have more than one YouTube channel where I'm organizing different types of videos, from vlogs to music video commentary. But all of it is going to be consolidated all in one spot, which is my site, ZoeDune.com. Now, you'll be able to see a lot of that stuff for free at this moment, but you won't be able to comment on it unless you subscribe or register for an account on the site. Registration is at a price though, but it's not that much. It's $12 a year. For $12 a year, there's no month to month. It's all just flat $12 a year. That helps to obviously keep the site going, keep the service going, but we're also working on some things where we'll be able to pay out artists, musicians. For instance, if you go to ZoeDuneRadio.com, you'll find that there's a select number of artists that are on there who you can do requests on. The request feature is on all the time, so you can go right now to ZoeDuneRadio.com and play around with that for different tracks. You'll get familiar with the songs, you get familiar with the artists, and every time you do that, they get paid. What happens is I send the report to those artists directly, and based on the report of how many requests they get paid for each one, much more than what Spotify pays. At this time, we're doing a beta test of a penny per play. That's been the agreement that we've made. So that's where we're at right now. But your subscription, this is what I'm talking about, your subscription to the site will increase payouts for these artists. And naturally, as we get more artists involved on here, it will help as well. Otherwise, it will simply stay at a penny per play. But we want to turn this into a boutique for independent artists, so we can treat them right. Okay. All right. I guess that's it. So until our next episode. Until later.